Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Brandon here, registered nurse from the United States, specifically Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area. I moved to Sweden about 4 years ago. I'm living here in the Malmö area of Sweden, and I work as a registered nurse in the hospital setting. I want to talk a little bit about 7 important lessons that I've learned moving abroad to Sweden. And I want to keep it real and tell you the truth. One of the problems that I find with a lot of people out there that are influencers is either they go one way or the other. Either it's all glitter and rainbow and unicorns, or it's very negative and dissing on the culture and just gripey and complaining. My belief is the truth is somewhere in the middle. And so hopefully this video can give you a more nuanced perspective. And there are a lot of people that are considering leaving the United States, especially right now with all the things that are going on. But there's a lot of different reasons that people want to leave the States or even other countries to move to another place. It's not always negative. It could be for love. It could be for adventure, like with myself. It could be for health reasons. It could have to do with climate. Just so many different reasons why a person could possibly want to move to another country. Before we get started, these videos are trimmed down quite a bit. So if you would like to have more content that's a little bit more specific, or you would like to have more direct contact with me, I do offer memberships for a modest fee, but you can always like and subscribe on these videos. That doesn't cost you anything, and that helps me a whole lot to be able to create more content. I do also have a lot of content out there. If you have questions about why I chose to move to Sweden, like this video is not just for moving to Sweden. It really applies to wherever you're going to move in this wonderful, beautiful planet. But if you do have more questions about how I got my nursing license in Sweden or the things I had to go through to become a nurse here, I do have a lot of videos on this platform. Feel free to check those out. Moving abroad is not just glitter, unicorns, rainbows, and Instagram pictures, as so many influencers like to paint. And it's not all bad either. A lot of people, they come to another country and they weren't really very well prepared. Maybe they were very set in their ways from the country that they came from, and they expect that the country that they're moving to is going to be very similar. Maybe they're used to a very high quality of life, and there are things that they have to give up. And if you're ill prepared or not willing to make changes or accommodations or come in with a good sense of humor and a good attitude, it can leave you feeling lost, frustrated, or even in some cases ready to go back to your home country and throw in the towel. So that's why I'm giving this unfiltered version to show you what's not in the brochure of moving abroad to another country. Lesson number 1, the grass is patchy green. What do I mean by that? So you've heard the expression, the grass is greener on the other side. It is normal for us humans to always be searching out to see what's on the other side of that fence, looking for something better, having a better life. One of the frustrating things is sometimes when you cross that fence, maybe it's not what you expected. And perhaps you invested a lot of time, energy, and money into going over that fence, as it were. What I can truly say is it's patchy green. And what I mean by that is there will definitely be some things that are greener than where you come from, and there will be some things that are browner than when you come from. So that's definitely been the case for me. I came to Sweden with rose-colored glasses. I did a lot of research for years. I looked into moving abroad since I was a kid. This has been a dream all my life to be able to have that experience of traveling, visiting Europe. And then I had traveled to Sweden about 3 different occasions to make sure this is what I want to do. First time was just vacation. Then I fell in love with it and wanted to move here. So I came 2 more times, also in the wintertime, to make sure I could handle the winters. And traveling to a country and actually living there are very different things. Now, everyone's circumstances are going to be different. Everyone has different wants, needs, personalities, different family circumstances, different financial circumstances. And so these things are very anecdotal and specific to myself. But I think generally and broadly speaking, these 7 different things I'm mentioning really do apply in most cases to everyone that is considering to move abroad. So that being said, coming to another country, there will be things that you probably like a lot better than where you come from, and there will be things that you probably think are better in the place that you came from, and that's just the way it is. So it's all about being able to swap out one set of challenges for another set of challenges, swapping out pros and cons. And every country on this beautiful planet lies somewhere on a spectrum of good, better, or worse. And there are many different spectrums. It could be healthcare, it could be political uncertainty, it could be financial, it could be the weather, it could be nature. There's so many different things that you have to look at and weigh and decide, okay, what can I live with and what can I do without? There is no perfect country. And then when it comes to people, another thing I've learned that I will include to this is kind of a part B of this first lesson, is people are people anywhere you go. So there are really good people in the States where I come from. There's really good people in Sweden. There are people in both countries that I find very challenging, and it's a little bit different. There may be some cultural values and things of that nature, but personalities and anatomy and behaviors are still the same. So it's not like you're going to be moving and then just everybody is so much better than where you come from. You will find challenging people. And if you're not prepared for that, then you're going to be let down. I work in healthcare and I deal with all sorts of personalities. And what I've found in comparing my healthcare experience in Sweden with the healthcare experience in America, yes, there's differences, but there's a lot of similarities between people in both cases. I have some adorable, wonderful people that I absolutely love taking care of, just like in the States. And then I have some people that I find are a bit more challenging, as in the United States. When I think about the pros and cons of moving from the States to here, I still feel like I have one foot in both countries, and I think it will probably always be the same because there are things that I definitely value. For example, in the United States, it's a very large country. In fact, many of the states actually have more people than the entire country of Sweden. There are even some cities in the States that rival the entire population of Sweden. So it's kind of hard to kind of compare, and that's what you'll find when you're comparing different countries, is it's like comparing apples and oranges. So whatever you do, try to do as much research as you can, but you will never be fully prepared, no matter how much research that you do. Reading about moving to another country is very different than living it. Lesson number 2, learn the local language. I cannot stress this enough. So one thing that I notice about a lot of people is that they will tend to cluster with their own kind when they move to another country, and it doesn't matter what country. I have friends that learn Chinese and moved to China, and they said they noticed that with a lot of the expat community. It was similar, same thing with Vietnam. And what you find is you're really missing out a lot. Like if you really want to connect on the local level and really have a local experience, then you're missing out if you can't speak the language. Sure, maybe they can speak your native language like English, but it's not going to be exactly the same. And it's the same thing with me being here in Sweden. So Sweden is known as being one of the highest English as a second language countries on this planet. That being said, I have met a lot of people that cannot speak English, do not feel comfortable speaking English, have limited English, or prefer to speak Swedish. One of the other things about Sweden that it's famous for is how people are very private. They tend to have the same friends that they've had since they were kids, and so it's hard to come into new relationships with people here in Sweden. But that has not been in my experience. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I have really pushed myself to learn Swedish as good as I can, and because of that, there is no shortage of friends or acquaintances for me here in Sweden. I have a lot of people that are very willing to be helpful to me. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that you're speaking the language of their heart, the language that they spoke at home. Like us in the States, we are pretty isolated in a sense. It's a very big country, and so going to another state is like going to another country. And most everybody speaks English. Learning the language doesn't just help you for making friends, it also helps open up opportunities for work. It's very difficult here in Sweden to get stable work if you do not speak Swedish. For example, I work as a nurse and I need to speak very good level Swedish to be able to do that. Another thing is it opens up other opportunities. So for example, I have had the ability to go and speak and have the privilege of speaking publicly in Swedish at lectures. I've also been able to meet the immigration minister, Johan Fursel, here in Sweden. And like I said, if I hadn't learned Swedish, then I would not have been able to do that. Lesson number 3, don't forget where you come from. This is an important lesson that I have only just now realized. Like I said, I've been living in Sweden for 4 years, and it's only come to my realization probably in the last several months about this. So let's go back to what I was talking about learning the language. So I had heard so many stories about people moving abroad to other countries and not learning the language. They would only hang out with people that spoke their language. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to be like that. And it's very important that I'm accepted by Sweden, that I'm integrated, that I get my job, that I speak fluent Swedish. And so I pushed myself really hard, and I was pretty much only hanging out with Swedish speaking people. And we'll get into one of the other lessons here that I have learned about moving abroad, and that has to do with immigration stress. But that combined with the fact that I was isolating myself away from other English speakers started to affect my mental well being. I soon realized that I was depressed and disconnected. I felt like a piece of me had been amputated. And I didn't realize it until I was actually invited by someone here on social media. They said, hey, you need to meet up with this other American that has been living here 1 year longer than you. They're having a lot of the similar challenges that you're having with the whole immigration process. So I'd like to introduce you to him. And as soon as we met, I'd never met this person before. There's a huge age difference between us. The person was much, much younger than me. And we just hit it off. It was like, because there is a certain way Americans deal with each other. And it was the first time, and this is interesting because I am an introvert by nature. A lot of people are surprised by that, but I am an introvert. I camouflage that a lot and appear to be an extrovert, but it comes at a cost to me with my energy levels. And so when I was around this individual, I actually felt the other. I felt recharged and energized and a lot happier. And that was like a wake up call to me. I was like, I should not be ashamed of coming from America. There have been people that have put me down for coming from America, people that are very nationalistic, and especially with what's going on in the world right now in the political scene, people say, go back to where you come from. We don't need you over here, and we don't need you bringing your guns over here and things like that. And so I've had some negativity. It hasn't all been negativity, and I'd say overall probably 95% of the people that I've met here are fantastic, but that 5% really does start to affect you. And so having some people that are going through the same struggles as you, people that you can use as a sounding wall and bounce ideas, and you can talk about your struggles. Perhaps they have strategies how to overcome a problem, like say with your immigration paperwork or getting a driver's license or getting a bank account. They can talk you through these things. And sometimes you just need a vent. And I find it doesn't matter if it's in the United States or in Sweden or Vietnam or Mexico, wherever, the locals really don't understand. If the locals have never traveled abroad and lived abroad for an extended period of time, they don't understand what it's like to be an immigrant. And so you shouldn't completely isolate yourself like I did, because it can lead to depression, feelings of detachment, and really affect your physical health. And so it's really important to be able to still retain a little bit of that. Integration is important, but you don't need to amputate a piece of who you are, because it doesn't matter if you come from a country that has a lot of issues. It could be, for example, North Korea. There are no doubt people from North Korea that are moving to other countries, and they probably still miss things from North Korea, despite the reputation that North Korea has. And so coming from a certain place just because of certain things going on there doesn't make you a bad person. And missing certain things from your country, like certain foods, or maybe a dialect that was spoken, or other little nuances, there's nothing wrong with being able to maintain those things. And like I said, learning the language was lesson number 2, and it's very important. Integration is very important, but at the same time, if you hadn't grown up where you grew up, you wouldn't be the person who you are. You'd be a completely different person. Lesson number 4 is immigration stress. So I had never heard of immigration stress. This was kind of a new thing to me. And if you look over the last year at my videos, you can see a change in my personality a whole lot compared to the first 3 years. I think in the first 3 years, there were some stressful moments of just trying to come into the system here in Sweden, like getting a bank account, getting a driver's license, getting a job, almost getting deported, things of that nature. But the last year has been not just the hardest year of these 4 years, it's been the hardest year of my life. And those of you that follow me know that I lost my father a year ago. I ended up with getting a botched surgery here in Sweden that led to me getting sepsis and hospitalized, and several months of treatment and antibiotics after that. I was very, very sick. Then my mother has had very poor health after my father's passing. Then my brother, who takes care of my mother, broke his hand and couldn't work. Then my sister has had to have 2 serious surgeries. I've had financial issues. I've had a lot of my own internal struggles with mental health. I've had struggles in the workplace. and you put all this stuff together, and any normal, sane person who's not a psychopath or sociopath is going to be affected. It is only normal. And I think when people watch my videos in the last few years, I think most are sympathetic, but there are quite a few that say that I've become a negative, gripey person, and they're like, you need to move back home. Looking back at all this over what's happened in the last year, I realize a lot of this is just immigration stress. This kind of came up thanks to, the algorithm on YouTube and the internet. I had a lot of recommendations to look at information about immigration stress. And when I started reading through it, I started realizing this is what I'm going through. And it's just something you just have to fight through. And we go back to what I said earlier about you need to not necessarily forget where you come from. You still need those connections with people you come from that have immigrated here, because they can support you on this journey. Lesson number 5, fix what you can before you move. I've seen some people, understandably, that say, I want to move to Europe so that I get socialized medicine. I have all these health problems. I've heard people want to move for other serious reasons, and that's understandable, and my heart goes out to you if you're going through that. But after what I've experienced with the healthcare system, I think there's pros and cons to the healthcare system here in Sweden. There are pros and cons to the healthcare system in the States, and I don't want to get into that because that's a whole ball of wax that I'm, and please, if you want to comment on this, be kind in the comments to everybody. This is not the video that I'm going to go into depth on American healthcare system versus Swedish healthcare system. That being said, I have had some very bad experiences with the healthcare system in Sweden, and I've had some very positive experiences with the healthcare system in Sweden. And that has taught me that is very, very important. If you have any medical concerns, you make sure and take care of it before you move. So I have a diagnosis of autism and PTSD, and these things are things that will never go away. A lot of people have some sort of this kind of diagnosis. What I found was it's easier for me to get treatment in the States than it has been in Sweden, and there's many reasons for that. A lot of it is being an immigrant makes it very challenging coming into the system from scratch. Another issue is there is a huge strain on the economy when it comes to healthcare costs, and so they're trying to find every way that they can to cut back on costs in Sweden. So what you're going to find is you may have some healthcare needs that you feel like, well, I'll just wait and take care of it where I go to. And unfortunately, some things are chronic and they're not going to go away. So, for example, if you have a problem with blood pressure, you may still have to have the same treatment wherever you move. But what you may find is they may not have the same medications. The regimens may be different. You may have to start from ground zero from the beginning. I was talking to a friend of mine who has moved to another Scandinavian country, not here, but another one. And she was saying that over there where she moved, they don't give any like sedation or anything for you when you're going to get a colonoscopy. And she has a history of issues in that department, if you will. And so there was fear because it's like, that just seems so inhumane that you would do something like that. And so you have to realize that where you're going, you may not have exactly the same kind of healthcare benefits or treatment that you're used to. Like for me, I got my wisdom teeth pulled, and like I said, I got complications and ended up with sepsis, and it was a botched surgery. But there was like, they didn't knock me out. I didn't get any pain medicine or anything like that. Instead, I was given a local anesthetic, some lidocaine, and that was it. Whereas in the States, you're going to get a whole lot more. And I'm not saying it's wrong or right. I'm just stating the facts of what happened. So if you have any healthcare issues that you can take care of before you move to the country you're going to, make sure and do that. Another thing is make sure if you have medications that you take, that you bring at least a year's supply of medications, because you may not get access to the healthcare system. Even though I was working and paying taxes, I did not have a right to healthcare here in Sweden until I got a personal identification number. And it was like pulling teeth to get a personal identification number. I finally got it after 2 years being here and working and paying taxes. But before that, they would only take care of me if I was having an acute need, like I'm bleeding or having a heart attack or stroke or something like that. But for chronic healthcare needs, they weren't going to do anything. And then there's certain medications that I was taking that they feel like, well, we're not going to do that. We're not going to cover that. We're not going to offer that medication. For example, I took finasteride for hair loss and I was getting good results from it. And then I came here and thankfully I had a year's worth of it, but now I've lost all the results. All the hair has fallen out from not being able to get that prescription refilled here in Sweden because I was told it is cosmetic. Lesson number 6, build a support system. So this kind of goes back into something about don't forget who you are, and you can still be connected with the people that speak your language. It's the same thing here. You need a support system, but this support system needs to be a combination of locals, foreigners, and people from your own country. The locals can help you with a lot of things that are, for example, language or cultural things. So for example, here in Sweden, it's very important to be on time. If you're 1 minute late, it is extremely rude and disrespectful and looked at in a very negative way. And so that may be something that you learn from a Swedish friend. You may also learn a little bit about how you behave in the workplace, or things that are okay to talk about, things that are not okay to talk about, just those general things. Then if you have connections with, for example, foreigners, it doesn't matter where they come from, but just foreigners in general, they can kind of help you with things like, getting a bank account, trying to get your driver's license, or any of those other mechanical things that come in the system. And then thirdly is people of your own kind, if there are any of where you come from. For example, maybe it's not an American, maybe it's someone else who speaks English. I have actually friends that are from Mexico, but the thing we have in common is we both speak English and we both come from North America. And so there is a strong connection between us. I came from Texas, so it's very close to Mexico. So I'm used to, a lot of my friends were from Mexico. I'm used to a lot of the foods, the cuisine, and that sort of thing. So we have that in common. And that will help you with having, the mental health support that you need, that emotional support, and friends. Really, isolation is one of the easiest, fastest ways to burn out when you're living abroad and just want to give up and go back home. And community is survival. Lesson number 7, save more money than you think. I have been putting back quite a bit of money, and I did the math, I did the research, and there were a lot of unexpected things that come up. So no matter how detailed the research that you do, you can never have too much money. If I were to do things over again, I would have saved up enough money to pay cash for a place to live, because here in Sweden, the wait list for getting apartments is very long. It took me 13 months to have the apartment that I'm in now. It's a very expensive apartment, but it was the only thing I could get on that kind of a wait list. And there are people in Sweden that have lived here, and they have basically from childhood been in the system, and so they've kind of like, things have fallen in place. For example, getting an apartment, they may have been on a wait list since they're 18 and they're 25. I'm 39 and starting from scratch when I first came here. And so I'm not going to be in as good of a situation. Plus, preference sometimes is given to Swedish people over a foreigner. For example, I didn't have a personal identification number, and so trying to get an apartment, that was a challenge for me despite having work and being a student here. Another thing is, everything that people have had spread out throughout their lives here in Sweden, like maybe getting a driver's license, that's a very expensive thing. If you are going to do a type of work that requires you have a driver's license, for example, I worked in home health and I had to have a driver's license for that because my patients, a lot of them lived far away and you couldn't take a bicycle. It was unreasonable. And so I was expected to get a driver's license, and that cost me a couple $1,000s for that. Healthcare costs. I thought that dental would be included in the healthcare here. And what I soon found was dental costs more in Sweden than it does in America. I was only paying about $24 a month for dental coverage on my insurance, and it didn't really cost me that much. And I even got 2 teeth exams and cleanings and x-rays, and maximum maybe spend a couple $100s a year on that. And then here in Sweden, you'll easily spend that just for a tooth cleaning, in private care, because of the fact that when you first come here, I was told that I could not get access to the public dental care. They do have public and they have private here, but I was told that I need to fix all my teeth. I can't have braces in like I have currently. If you have any cavities, anything like that, it has to be, basically your teeth need to be perfect before they will take you. Whereas a Swedish person who's born in the system, they've had all these years to kind of go through the system and have these things addressed, and they get dental care up to, I think, I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, I think up to the age of 24, everybody's covered, whereas we don't have that where I come from, the States. And so coming here as a middle-aged adult, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, like with dental type stuff. Now, the only thing I had a problem with in my mouth was that I had braces, and I'd been going through braces for a couple years. It was the COVID pandemic, which complicated that, and I had been trying to move abroad for like 10 years, and it's just like, it's always something, my grandmother was dying of cancer, and then I had some health problems. So it's just like, there will always be something, you know what I mean? Nothing's going to be ever perfect. And so I just had to be like, okay, the last thing I've got now is these stupid braces on my teeth. So, and I talked to my dentist about it, and he's like, they should be able to just take over and I can communicate. And that didn't work out the way it should have. And it took me several months to find someone that could take me as a patient in private, and had to pay for braces all over again. So it was like another almost $4,000 for braces. And then on top of that, I got a lot of teeth damage because there were several months where I wasn't getting teeth cleanings and I wasn't able to get the braces adjusted. And so it messed up my mouth pretty bad. And so, yeah, just save up as much money as you can, because you just don't know what's going to happen. There are things that are going to be unpredictable. I have had some people get mad at me and they're like, I want a specific number. I need to know how much money that I'm supposed to save to come there. And you're not giving anything specific. And the reality is, there are so many variables, it's impossible. And that's what's so great about ChatGPT and the internet now. You can go on and do your own research. We all have different qualities of life that we want to live up to. We have different amounts of family members. Do you have children? Do you not have children? Are you married? Is your partner going to work, or is it just one of you is going to work? Are you going to study while you're here? Are you going to work while you're here? What city are you going to live in? How big of a place are you? There's so many variables, and so there's not really a way for me to tell you how much money to save on this video. That being said, do a lot of research and basically figure out however much you need, and maybe even round that up 50% more than that, just throwing out an arbitrary number. I'm not a financial advisor, this is just for and entertainment purposes. But yeah, this is one of the biggest challenges I think for me in Sweden has been economically. I honestly could share dozens more lessons that I've learned from this journey. These are kind of like the 7 that kind of pop up in my head as the biggest ones. So if you like the video, I appreciate you liking, subscribing. Like I said, I've got memberships where if you want to ask me specific questions and come in better contact with me, maybe see some content that I don't keep out there for the general public, make sure and check that out. Thanks so much for your attention and for watching this video. Have a wonderful rest of your day. See you next time.